Good morning, everyone. I'm Cheryl Bondi, the Drinking Water and Groundwater Trust Fund Program Administrator. We have some other DES folks on the call to help out with presentations and give answers to any questions. We've got Marissa Boire. She is the Trust Fund Program Specialist. Tom Willis is on the call. He is the Trust Fund Drinking Water Engineer. We also have Jonna McKenna from the Drinking Water Groundwater Bureau Program Administrator that oversees the State Revolving Fund, ARPA, and all other drinking water funding programs. We also have Rick Skarinka and Jennifer Mates, some of our other drinking water engineers on the call. So we have a lot of people here that can help us answer any questions that you may have. The webinar, everyone was muted upon entry, plus we were having the video cameras off. If you have questions, use the function to raise your hand and Marissa will unchat you and you can ask your question. You can also type questions in the chat box that we can all be monitoring and answering those questions together as a group. Okay, so with that, I'm going to get started. Okay, my slide won't advance, so I am going to have to click it like this. So first, I just want to, I'm sure a lot of you are familiar with what the trust fund is, but I'll provide some background so we're all starting at the same page. So some history on the trust fund. In 2013, the state went to trial against ExxonMobil for damages for contaminated drinking groundwater wells in southern New Hampshire with MTBE. The state went to trial against Exxon and won $236 million. During the appeals process, the legislature established RSA 485F to establish the Drinking Water and Groundwater Trust Fund to receive the funds and administer them. It also established the Drinking Water Groundwater Advisory Commission. This commission consists of 19 members that represent the House. There's representatives on it, state senators, and various stakeholder groups. So in 2017, the proceeds plus interest totaled $276 million was deposited into the trust fund. The mission is to provide for the protection, preservation, and enhancement of drinking water and groundwater resources of the state. So the trust fund is unique in that it may fund a wide range and different types of projects from source to tap. At the source, we have programs that protect important water supply lands to prevent from future contamination. So that's with our source water protection program, remediation of groundwater from contamination, and finding new sources for public water systems. At the top, we have funding programs, which we'll learn about today, to fund for infrastructure projects to replace or improve or create new infrastructure to address contamination, water quality, water supply, or different capacity deficiency issues. So the trust fund has several different programs, and today we're just going to talk about the Drinking Water Construction Assistance Program. In particular, we're going to talk about the annual round. If you're interested in any of the other programs that are funded, please look at our website. Each of these programs on this flowchart here have their own website that you can learn more about. One in particular that I want to highlight is the one on the right-hand side of that flowchart, the Consolidation Study Grants. We can provide up to $10,000 to small public water systems that need to perform a feasibility study to look at the different options available to that water system for improving or interconnecting with the other systems. So this is a great resource for small water systems to apply to before they come to the construction round, to hire a consulting firm, an engineering firm to do an analysis. So please visit our website if you're interested in that program. And so this program, the Construction Project Assistance Program, has been providing grants and loans for drinking water infrastructure since 2017. To date, there's been 111 drinking water infrastructure projects that have been funded by this program throughout the whole state. This is 103 million in grants and 66 million in loans. This includes the significant funding for the Southern New Hampshire Regional Water Project. This was the state's largest regional water distribution and interconnection project to date that brought water from Manchester Waterworks to 5 communities in southern New Hampshire to address local wells that have been contaminated with MTBE. So the trust fund was a significant contributor to that monumental project. And I'd like to highlight a central theme of the trust fund is leveraging outside funds, and that is by applicants bringing in matching funds from other outside sources. So although we have given out 103 million in grants and 66 million in loans, if we look at the funds that were leveraged, it's been a total of 151 matching funds have been brought along with those projects to the trust fund. So who can apply and what types of projects are eligible? So any state agency, board, or commission is eligible to apply, or any person or legal entity that owns a community water system or a water distribution system. So this would be any public water system. If you are a homeowners association that is hooked up to a public water system, but you have your own internal distribution system, you can also be eligible. And non-transient, non-community water systems that are nonprofit organizations may also apply. So this would be like a school. And so what types of projects are eligible? The Advisory Commission really wants to emphasize projects that are ready, projects that already have an engineering concept, a work plan, have already applied to and exhausted other sources of outside funding. And so projects that are really ready. And the types of projects can be anything for supporting infrastructure from source to tap that will enable the state to meet present and future drinking water needs, that will address or improve water quality and increase the longevity of a system. So there's 2 avenues in which applicants can submit funding requests to the trust fund. One is the annual round, the grant and loan program, or the special project assistance. To apply for a special project assistance, you have to meet one of the 4 eligibility criteria. If you do, that allows for the project to be submitted out of sync with our annual round. At this point, because our annual round is open and we only have 4 weeks until the due date, we will not be submitting any more special project assistance applications, and all applications are now going to be coming in through the annual round. Our timeline is that we announced our request for proposals about a week or 2 ago, and we're now accepting applications, and in late fall is when the commission will do their review. So DES is now accepting applications. If you go to our website, which was provided in the email, the link, you can access the application. When you're putting together your application and trying to evaluate your project and whether it's eligible and whether it would be competitive, these are some of the criteria that you should be considering. Once again, the central theme of the trust fund is to provide funding to projects that are ready to go. So projects that have leveraged funding, that have applied to SRF, applied to the other funding programs available to them, whether or not you received the funding, but at least making that effort and showing that the trust fund is the last dollar in, and project readiness. So you've already had an engineering analysis and have a solid work plan on how the project will be completed. In addition, the Advisory Commission has some criteria that they use to evaluate projects and evaluate the competitiveness on whether it meets the overall mission of the trust fund. The core criteria, so the most important criteria that the commission is always focused on is contamination. So will the project address contamination through removal, reduction, or mitigation? Is the project going to involve an interconnection or consolidation? So is there a smaller water system that has water quality or water supply issues? And rather than trying to address those issues on site, is hooking up to a larger nearby public water system the more long-term sustainable solution is what the trust fund would more highly favor. Projects that expand or are of regional significance, so bringing water from a larger public water system to areas that currently don't have a public water system, and projects that promote economic development. So projects that will bring water that currently doesn't have water in an area or expanding capacity to areas that will support job growth and housing development. Those are really the core criteria, but the other criteria that's always considered by the commission when they're looking at projects is financial hardship. So to evaluate financial hardship, they're going to be looking at what the public water system's median household income is in relation to the state's median household income. What has been the stakeholder investment in the water system? So that's represented by something called an affordability index. That is the annual water rate that users pay divided by the public water system's household income. Generally, the commission is using about 1.5 to evaluate what is affordable. So you want to make sure that you have the numbers to be able to calculate that index and provide that in your application because that is heavily used by the commission. Other criteria is that if it's an infrastructure upgrade project, so for example, upgrading or replacing a storage tank, if that infrastructure has received a deficiency in the past, you'd want to include that in your application so that we know that this is a time sensitive. This is something that isn't in compliance and needs to be addressed. Projects that will support long-term asset management, so long-term sustainability is always looked at by the Advisory Commission. And the geographic distribution of the projects, because the Commission wants to ensure that they're getting funding to all areas of the state that need it. So this program, the Construction Project Assistance Program, provides both grants and loans. And on the funding application, you need to clarify the funding request and show both pieces individually. So this means that when you sit down to put together your application, you have to look at your total project costs. You have to look at what other funding sources you have coming in and the leveraged funding. And you need to really consider how much grant versus loan should you be asking for. Projects that meet these criteria are more competitive and prioritized for grant money would be projects that are addressing those core criteria. So these are listed here with the red bullets. Projects that are ready and that have long-term viability. Projects that serve primarily New Hampshire residences. This is something new and that the commission, so you'll see on the application, will ask of your public water system how many homes are residential primary homes versus vacation homes. If your public water system is 80% second homes, vacation homes, that doesn't mean that you can't qualify for trust fund funding. It just means that you should consider requesting more loan than grant because right now the priority is to try to get grant funds to full-time residences. but you can still apply and just provide that number and try to really sharpen your pencil and make sure you're requesting the right amount of loan amount considering how many homes are vacation homes. And what about just infrastructure upgrade projects? So if a project is not hitting one of the four criteria, if it's just an infrastructure improvement project, you can still apply for the trust fund, but how much grant should you ask for? If you can demonstrate financial hardship, which is evaluated by the advisory commission by either an MHI that's less than the state, which is currently 83,000, or if your water rates in relation to your median household income are high, and high is above 1.5, then you are eligible for some grant funds. And that's where knowing, um, using some estimates of if you took on a loan, how much would that increase your water rates for your users? And you would incorporate that into what your estimated affordability index would be. And lastly, you need to just request what is needed. So once you've gone through all the exercises on the left-hand side, looking at your project competitiveness, um, do you have mostly primary primary residential homes? Do you demonstrate financial hardship? Then look at your budget and start to evaluate how much grant versus loan you should ask for. There's no minimum match requirement, but the commission always ranks projects higher that have secured and exhausted their other funding options. There's also a section in the application where you need to justify your grant request and just lay out, if you meet these criteria on the left-hand side, try to really provide the adequate detail for those. So the application is up on the web page now, and everything I just discussed in terms of criteria, the evaluation process, um, eligibility is all on the web page. Here's our timeline this year. So the applications are due sorry, that should say October 13th, not 14th. So we need to fix that because the 14th is a Saturday. I don't plan to be here. So October 13th, by the close of business that day. DES will then take about a week to do an internal review. We will then distribute all the applications to the entire advisory commission. We also have a subcommittee, which is a subset of the advisory commission members that really more heavily evaluate these and dig into them. They meet 3 or 4 times to go through with the criteria and evaluate the projects. The full advisory commission has to vote on the final funding recommendations. That would probably be in late November. And DES will then send notification letters early December is when you will know if you received funding. So please contact us with any questions. I'm Cheryl, the trust fund administrator. We have Marissa and Tom on this call. You can ask questions now, or we can follow up through email later. We have a new application this year. So folks on this call that have applied in the past will see that it's a little different. In the past, you had to submit one electronic end form, and then you would attach 3 fillable PDFs to that end form. This year, what we've done is we've taken everything that used to be on those PDFs and we've put it all onto just one single electronic application. It's mostly like 90% of it is the same questions that we've always asked in the past. It's just all in one place now, so you don't have to worry about uploading and attaching or emailing those other PDFs. So that link is on our webpage, or you can go directly to DESN Forms and you will find it there. Marissa, at the end of this webinar, is going to do a walkthrough and show you what this application looks like and answer any questions right there about it. So before we jump into questions from folks on the call, I'm going to go over some of the most frequently asked questions that upfront we think that folks would ask. And I just want to double check. I see some questions in the chat box, so we'll make sure we address those as well. So a big question, because we're moving to an electronic form completely, can I submit a paper application in the mail or send it as an email? So our new application is fully digital from start to finish. You do have to create an N-form login, but I promise it's really easy. And we are here to help you. If you are having accessibility issues, please reach out to myself or Marissa and we can help you. And this is really to maintain consistency on our end, to reduce the amount of paper shuffling. And sometimes, but in the past, when we had the 3 forms that were attached to PDF, sometimes people would submit the application and they'd be missing one of those forms and we'd have to try to find it later. And like I said, Marissa and I can help you. Who is the applicant? I just want to clarify that the applicant should be the public water system. So the town, the water district, or the homeowners association or cooperative that is to receive the funds. I understand that oftentimes HOAs and cooperatives may have a property management company that is managing their utilities on their behalf. While those types of groups can most certainly help you with the application, the public water system has to be the actual applicant. There's going to be 3 different spots to put contact information and addresses. So just to clarify, the applicant is the business address of the public water system that's going to receive the funds. If you have technical, technical groups that are helping you, so if you have a consulting or an engineering firm or a property management company that's helping you with this grant application on your behalf, their information would go there. And then we have the project location and address. So this is where the actual project will happen. What other funding sources? So I've really talked about leveraging funds, applying for other outside matching funds. This is the typical list that the advisory commission would look at to see if you've applied, if you're eligible. Of course, the DES, Drinking Water State Revolving Fund, just published their priority list recently. They currently have several different pots of money right now due to some of the new bill money. So they have their base SRF, and they also have the Emerging Contaminants Fund and the lead service line replacement. And Jonna, you're on the call, you can correct me, but my understanding is the lead service line replacement applications are still open, that's on an ongoing basis. The same thing with the PFAS remediation program. Those are received on an ongoing basis. And then we have USDA Rural Development, Community Development Block Grants, and Northern Borders. Those are outside funding. Those are non-DES funding sources. So when you're filling out your application and you're answering those questions of did you apply for outside funding, use this to double check to see that you did apply or you were eligible to apply for these other groups, these other funding pots. I feel like I already went over how much grant should you ask for. Like I said, there's no match requirement, but really go through that criteria and look at how competitive your project is and whether it's meeting those core criteria. If you can demonstrate financial hardship, that the water rate, if you took on a loan and the water rates would be too high and unaffordable. So make sure that you're really looking at that and providing a solid justification. Once you hit send on the N form, can you modify your application? So on the N form, once you open it up, you do not have to complete the application in one sitting. You can save it and you can log back in later and complete the application. However, once you hit submit, what you have submitted is what we will see on our end. If you hit submit and then you realize that you made a mistake or there's something you want to clarify or change, you could email either Marissa or myself and we can help you get those changes in there. Once we take the applications and hand them over to the commission, we cannot make any changes after that. If you have already received funding from the trust fund, but due to increasing construction costs and now you have a budget shortfall, can you apply for gap funding to the trust fund? The answer is yes. Once again, if you have exhausted other outside funding sources and you still have a budget shortfall, you can apply to the trust fund. Please be sure to fill out the funding table accurately and make sure that in the project description and the justification section, you identify and clarify that this is a project that's already received trust fund funding and that you're looking for gap funding. At this point, projects should just come in as in the annual round. The timing is not appropriate to apply for a special project. So the intention, because the intention of the Special Project Assistance Program is to facilitate a rapid review and expedite a funding decision for projects that are time sensitive. At this point, we're in the annual round. So please, you don't fill out Form 1S, which is still on end forms, because that would not apply for the annual round. Now, let's say you are a homeowners association or a co-op located in a town, and you know that your median household income of your community is less than what the town's is. So this would be helpful when you are filling out your affordability index and doing those calculations. Then you should have an income survey done for your community, and that can be done using this service here. So you can click on this link and learn more about that. Our current rate for interest rate for loans is 3.5%. This was based on the 11 bond index for the last week of July. So it's consistent with the SRF and the PFAS loan programs right now. We update this annually, but right now that's what it is 3.5%. And this rate will be locked in if you are accepted for funding for a loan. When we draft up the loan documents, that's when that rate will be set. Once you submit a final application, what should you expect? It will take until, so I guess that's not really 3 months, October, November, December. It'll take about 2.5 months. You would receive an award letter in early December. We understand that a lot of that boards and then towns have their annual votes. So if you're going to be accepting funding or voting on a loan, that process, drafting up those warrant articles needs to begin in December. So we will have award letters out early December. And when you do receive an award letter, Marissa and I will be following up and help guide you through that process. So at this point, I've gone through my slides. I'm going to leave it on here for a minute. Marissa is going to go through the end form next, but I wanted to take a moment and see if anyone has any questions about what I've just gone over. And if you raise your hand or put in the chat box, Marissa will unmute you. Okay, it looks like we don't have any questions. So Marissa, would you like to share your screen and go through this new end form?
Okay, let me know if you can see it.
We can.
Okay.
And we can see your presentation notes on the left-hand column.
Yes.
No. That's fine. I don't know if you want to see them or
Okay.
not, but they're
Yes, I
there.
did. Okay.
Okay.
Okay. So let's start from the beginning. When you get to the M Forms page, it's going to take you here. And as Cheryl said, you have to register and create a login in order to submit an application. So this is going to talk you through that. And then once you register, you're going to get an email and then you'll be able to sign in. And once you're in, you're going to go to the Finder and you're going to search DWGTF for Drinking Water Groundwater Trust Fund, and all of our forms are going to come up. But the one that you want is Construction Project Assistance Application. That's going to take you to this page. It's going to have all the information about the form itself and also the contact information. That's where you can find me. And then you're going to click Begin Form Entry. And if you had previously gone in and started an application, all of your drafts are going to be saved here, or you can just start a new form. So this is the draft that I created to kind of show you the ideal application. It starts off with applicant information. So this should be somebody from the organization that is going to be receiving the funds. Make sure that your organization name is full and complete because we use this when we draft up our documents. For contact information, phone, business number, just make sure it's the number that you can be most easily reached at. And then we also need your email that you can be most easily reached at. And then put in the address of your organization. So like the main business office. And then next is technical support and engineering contact information. This is where you can enter your engineer. You can add multiple. Again, put the correct and full name of their organization and the phone and email that they can best be reached at. Then the next tab is project information. This is where you get to name your project. You can do it, or usually the engineer that you hire does it for you. We use this when we're drafting up the documents again. And then project location address is exactly where the work will be taking place. It may be exactly the same as the applicant address, which is fine. But then further down here, we ask that you explain exactly where the project is going to be happening. So like relate it to things in the area. Where is it in relation to this or that? Next is project type. You can select any of these that apply to your project. And then down here, we ask for a concise overview of your project. The more, the better. Make it a very good little essay. This is great for me when I'm drafting up the documents. And then we are going to ask how much grant funds you're requesting and how much loan. And then how long your loan term is. And these things will automatically populate based on what you put up here. So you don't have to worry about doing any mental math. And then enter the total project costs, and it'll tell you what percent of your total project cost is requested from the trust fund. So water system information. For the PWS number, public water system number, enter, if it belongs to you, enter that, or if you're connected to a municipality, enter that one. And then you just enter the town served, how many people are served by your PWS, and how many service connections there are. And this is something that Cheryl was mentioning. We try to make sure that the people that are applying are primary residences. So we ask that you enter how many people that are served are primary residences, and you have to insert something. It won't let you do nothing, so I'm just going to put 125. And then you're going to enter your annual water rate, and it tells you here how that's calculated. And then your projected. And then this is your median household income. You're going to enter that, and then with those, it's going to calculate your AI, your affordability index, and your projected AI. And as Cheryl was saying, anything above 1.5 is considered high. So this is where we want you to justify your project. This is like the essay section. Um, put as much detail as possible. I'm not going to go through every single question, but just explain in depth everything that it's asking. There's a good number of questions, and there are character limits. And then down here it asks, does your PWS serve a community with a high AI? Explain that, and then we have these here for your reference. And this is more about where you can explain about median household income or financial hardship. Next is the project plan. More essays. So these little prompts used to be one of the required attachments on the old application. So if you had applied before, this is where that is now, just on here. This was previously a planning document, but not anymore. Basically, we just want to know the existing conditions, alternate evaluations that have been made, and then we're going to have you explain why you're choosing the path that you're taking for your project, and also the basis of design. And then here is our lovely funding table. Oh, no, it's not. That's next. This is project cost. So it breaks it up into engineering, construction, all these other things, break it up. You do have to enter something. Whoops. And then again, this will auto-populate based on what you put up here. And then explain how you got your cost estimates and any other additional comments if there is any. This is the project timeline. Again, you have to enter something. If you know, this is the one that people get most confused about. So this, if you're a municipality, enter the date that your warrant article is going to be voted on. And if you're not a municipality, this is the date that your board or council will vote on submitting an application. This is the funding table. So this is where we ask, have you exhausted all of your sources of funding? Making sure that you've done your homework, basically. This is where you enter if you've applied to these or not. You can choose yes or no. And then the status, if you choose yes, is secured, pending, or anticipated. And then you can enter the grant amount and the loan amount. And again, you can't just leave nothing. If you got 0 loan, you have to put 0. And then you can enter the loan forgiveness amount as well. And then to the side, you can explain why you didn't apply, and then any additional notes. And then this again will auto-populate. It'll tell you how many funds you have from other sources and the percentage of that compared to what compared to your total project cost.
And Marissa, can I
Yeah.
chime in really quick? Can you put the funding chart back up?
Yes.
Because I saw that we had someone ask in the chat box, what is the definition of exhausted all other funding sources? So this table, the left-hand column, has been pre-populated. These are the go-to funding sources that are available in New Hampshire for drinking water systems. So we've already pre-populated this. Now, if you put no, that's fine. And then in the right-hand column there, when it says, why didn't you apply? If you're not eligible for a rural development, if you're not eligible to apply to some of these on this list, then you would just write, not eligible, not qualified. But at least that lets us know that you considered it and it's not accessible to you. We want to make sure that everyone's applied to the things that are accessible to them. So this is the go-to list that we're going to use to evaluate that. That's it. Thanks.
Okay. And then the attachments. Right now, we used to have so many attachments that were required, but again, we fixed it and now only one is required, and that's the authority to submit. You can click it right here and it'll take you right to it. And then I drafted up the perfect authority to submit to show you, because this is another confusing one. So the directions are up here. It explains what the form is. And then these are kind of little check boxes for you that say what, basically the directions. Just check them off as you go. So the first section, put the name of your organization, the correct and full name, all punctuation and everything, and the address for that. The first person is considered the person who is filling out the form. So that's John Smith here. John Smith has to belong to this organization, and he has to certify that a meeting held on this date to discuss submitting an application was discussed by the board of members, and then that they also voted to authorize another person that cannot be John Smith to speak on behalf and sign on behalf of the project moving forward. And for the sake of this, her name is Jane Goodall. So John Smith is authorizing Jane Goodall to speak on behalf of the project and is letting us know that a meeting was had to discuss entering into a grant agreement or a loan agreement with the state. And then John Smith has to sign down here. So John, Jane, and John.
And this is Cheryl again. I just want to clarify that this is different than the authority to borrow and an authority to grant funds, which you only fill that form out if you are awarded funds. This is an authority to
Submit
submit
an
the
application.
application.
Yes.
Yeah, I just want to
Yeah.
clarify that this is saying, because what we don't want to have happen is a water system, a member of the HOA board submit an application and the other members of the board are unaware that they have submitted an application. We need to ensure that the whole board knows that the application has been submitted. It's actually really just, it all falls in line with project readiness, that the board, everyone, the governing body of that PWS is aware and supportive of the application. All right, thanks.
Okay. And then there's a witness to the document. This person should also be at the meeting to say that, yes, it did indeed happen. And they also have to hold a position within your organization, just like John and Jane do. That's that. And then so that's where you'll attach it when it's complete. And then there's optional attachments. You could attach your engineering documents or letters of support from the community. Just some things, or anything else that you think would be good for us to have. And then it's going to have you review it. It's going to show you what it looks like on our end. Make sure everything's right. It'll tell you if you missed anything. So you have to go back and fix it. Otherwise, it will not let you submit. And then certify and submit. Again, it won't let you. If you have to come back later, save and exit. But you'll be able to submit the form if everything is right. And then we will be notified on our end and we will let you know that we received it and that it's in review. And I think that's everything. Do you have anything else to add, Cheryl or Tom?
No, I
Oh,
think,
I'm good. I'm good.
yeah,
Okay.
great. Thank you for going through that. So that was everything that we had to present and go over. I see that Rick Skorinka has a question. Sure, Rick. Marissa, I think you have to unmute him.
I'm trying. Hang on.
No. Rick, maybe try unmuting yourself.
Hang on, Rick. I can allow camera, but I can't. Okay, hang on.
Rick, I was able to unmute myself. Can you unmute yourself? No?
What about now, Rick?
No, he still has a mute symbol. Poor Rick.
Poor Rick. I'm
How about
sorry.
now, Cheryl?
Yay, there
Yay!
you are.
Okay. Yeah,
There you go.
sorry, I just want to send just a couple things that just if you could clarify on the application, and because it would be questions in my mind, and I'll just go run through them. First of all, the project location. If someone's developing a well, they don't know where the location is at this time. So how how I don't know what you want information someone would put down. There may be six different well sites that they're looking at. So project location, it's just if you could just clarify that. Second is that so if the city of Concord was applying on the primary residence that they serve, uh, does the city of Concord put how many primary residential residents they serve, or because they serve businesses and commercial development? So if you just think about that, I know the whole goal of that primary residence was for small community systems to clarify, but if the city of Dover is applying too, then what do they put? Do they have to count the number of residential primary residences that they serve? Uh, Another uh, a third thing is that a lot of the the alternative evaluation and the financial evaluations have been done hopefully in a studies or about by consultants, and so there is a document that or a planning study that's already been done. Do they just reference in those sections where it was project funding or project description, whatever? Can they just reference the attached evaluation, or should they put in some summary words? And then the last thing, just to ask about is that
Wait, hold on, Rick. Can I, because I'm writing down your questions, but I think it might be easier if I answer them one at a time
sure.
because I can't keep track. What was the first one?
So, just if they don't know the exact location of the project yet, what
Okay.
information? All right.
Yep. So that's an excellent example for a news source. For that box is a text box, so you can write whatever you want. So I would say that you should write exactly what you said. You said you should say this project is for development of a new source. We will explore 6 potential well sites in the
Okay.
town of
Great.
Allenstown.
Okay.
Yep.
Good.
So it does
Uh,
not have to be a physical street address by any means. That's why we made it a text box. You could write, this project is going to look for a new source for the Main Street neighborhood. We just
yeah.
want to have an understanding of like the extent of the project. So
Okay.
that's for that one. What was the second question?
It says you should list the number of primary residential services you serve.
Yeah.
So
So
the
that's
city of
correct.
Dover,
Yeah,
you
so
know.
that's correct, Rick. That question is intended for the smaller systems, the homeowners associations and the co-ops that maybe only have 50 homes, and the advisory commission is just trying to gauge how many of those homes are year-round residences that would benefit. So I think what we'll do is change that question. Um, and and put the word small system in front of it so that people understand that that's what the intention of that question is. Obviously, the city of Dover and the city of Concord, we're not going to ask them to provide
Okay.
a metric for that.
Can I interject something? You know, my thought is, and you know, these communities can find out how many, you know, services, you know, they have very easily. They just go into their billing records. And, you know, that I think that would give, you know, how many active customers do they have, or how many active bills do they send out? You know, that's all in a, you know, communities are sizes, you know, Somersworth, Rochester, Claremont, you know, how many bills do they send out? I think that would give it an idea of the number of connections, rough figures. And if we go into population, I think we use what's in our rules. Rick is really, you know, the number of services times 2.5, which is a census related figure. And I think that will provide a rough estimate for giving us a reasonable data point.
Whatever's the simplest thing. I don't care. That's all. The third point is that you know, there's a lot of planning grants
document.
Yep.
Yep.
Okay.
The planning document.
Yep.
So I don't want to scare everyone or throw people off. The planning document, we are asking the exact same questions that were previously asked on Form 3. So Form 3 used to bullet out about 8 to 12 questions, and it said, please answer all these questions in an attached planning document. So what we did was we took those 8 to 10 questions and simply made them questions in the form. They're the same exact questions. What we're trying to do is get the answers to those questions up front, because when people submit a 50 to 100 page engineering report, we have to sift through the engineering report to pull out the 8 to 10 questions. So if you have an engineering report, we're asking that you pull out those 8 to 10 questions and put them in the form. And then you most certainly can attach your engineering report at the end if you want to provide that supplemental information. But what we're trying to do is pull out the information for the commission up front that Marissa and I ultimately would have to go through the planning document and search for and pull out later, Rick.
Good. Okay. Good. I'm glad you clarified that. Okay.
Yeah, it's the same questions. I don't want to scare anyone. It is the same questions. We're just asking you to do the copying and pasting for us, please.
Okay.
Ahead of time.
And
so
then
that was 3, but I think you had more.
Yeah.
These are good questions, Rick.
Well, one more, just getting back to, you know, the last thing with the authority to submit, you know, if, you know, a lot of these boards or, you know, sometimes even in city council, you have to get in front of an advisory commission, then you go to the city council to do something. So if they don't have by the 13th, the authority to submit, can they submit that afterwards?
Yes, thank you, Rick, for bringing that up. I understand the timing of the solicitation for this annual round came a couple weeks later than typically in the past. And so what I would advise you to do is to submit your application, and in the authority to submit attachment, you could just submit a note and just say, we're holding a meeting. You could submit the authority to submit, and then just let us know that your meeting minutes will follow. And we could extend that up until, you know, mid-November to give you that other 30 days to hold that meeting. And I'm going to share my screen one more time really quick to show you the web page. Can everyone see the web page right now? Yes? Rick, you're unmuted. Okay. So here is more information that I just, you know, went over in my presentation, but it does say right here that if your system has an issue obtaining those supporting meeting minutes before October 13th, because that is only 3.5 weeks away, please just send me a note and let me know, and I'll mark that on your application, and we'll get those meeting minutes after.
Great. Okay. Thanks, Shell. Just the last kind of a comment, and is that I think is it safe to say that if someone if a an entity hasn't even approached a board yet, or discussed the project, this is not the time to be filling out an application for this round. Would you say that's true?
I would agree. We're trying
Okay.
to avoid a situation in which an individual of a board, like a homeowners association, where you have an individual from the board and maybe one other person from the board submits an application on behalf of the entire board and the other members didn't know. DES does not want to be the one that breaks the news to the board that individuals submitted on their behalf. We need to know that they are talking about it and everyone's supportive and on board of moving forward with that application. So if
And
you,
just
Mhm.
another comment, or just to clarify on that additional, it's just, and if someone's calling up their operator tomorrow and say, how much does it cost for a new pump station? And you get a number, and and then you go forward with filling out an applications, that's probably not the right way of going about this at this time. And that's based upon what we've seen in the past from other applicants too, whether it's SRF and or the trust fund. So,
yes. No, thank you, Rick. That is a really good point. We want to avoid those situations.
yeah.
And that's why the trust fund the trust fund requires that form, the authority to submit, and other funding programs don't. And that is why we don't want to be a situation um, where individuals apply and other members of that board not only didn't know, but might not be supportive of that project. So, we have Michael Moore with his hand up. Marissa, if you could unmute him.
I don't think I can.
No?
I've been trying. Let
Oh,
me
can Michael
see.
unmute himself?
I'm gonna make him a presenter and see what that does.
Okay. So in the meantime, we can answer some of these chats. Can you put the contact names and email addresses? Yes, I can do that. If you missed this meeting, yes, we are going to send, we'll probably get this posted on like a YouTube and have that link sent to everyone that was here today.
Hello?
This,
Michael?
there's Michael. Hi,
Hi,
Michael.
Okay, we
can
can
I
hear
just,
you.
all right, thanks. I'm new to this. We have managed to put in an application, received funding for the preliminary engineering work. Okay, so that's good, and that's all behind us now. We're going to start the project, but there's no way we'll be ready by, the next couple of weeks to put in for the actual construction. So my basic question is, will this type of program continue everything that you've shown here today in basically the same format next year and the following year and so forth? I mean, this is an ongoing process. I just wanted to confirm that.
Yes, that's a great question. The trust fund has an annual round every year, and it's always on this same cycle. So late summer, we announce and solicit for applications, and it follows the same review process. If when you have your engineering analysis complete, if your project hits one of those 4 criteria for a special project, you could explore submitting an application outside of the funding cycle if your analysis shows, I don't know much about your system, but let's say your analysis shows that there's drinking water contamination and a significant financial burden, time sensitive, then you could reach out to me or your project manager, meaning the Drinking Water Bureau engineer, and explore whether it would be a special project. But at the very least, we will have this next year. And for those on the call that are at that stage where you're like, I'd really like to apply to this program, but we haven't had an engineering study done yet, and we're not sure what our options are. I would like you to visit our webpage and look at the Consolidation Study Assistance Program. It's a very simple application, and it can offer up to $10,000 to small water systems to hire an engineer, to hire a consulting firm, to do that initial conceptual analysis, to look at whether your small water system, what's more viable and long-term sustainable in the long term. Should your small water system be looking at a new source and upgrading your local infrastructure, or should you be exploring connecting to a larger system for more long-term solution? So if you're at that stage, please reach out to us because this program hasn't been highly used and we have money left in it for these small grants to help for planning. I see a question in the chat that I might need to ask someone from SRF to help. How would you recommend a calculation be done for MHI for a residential school? Would they just use the MHI of the town at that point, I think? Because
Yeah,
those are sort of, that's your stakeholder group, I would say, right?
that's how I answered it. Is if it's primarily if it's a public school, if it's private, that might be a little bit different. But if it's a public school, yeah, use the town that they're in.
Okay, that's what I would agree. Great. These are great questions. If no more, I'm thinking. Okay, great. I really appreciate everyone being here and learning more about the program. I will follow up with an email with some of the little things like our contact information, webpage, and a link to this webinar. But thank you all for being here today.